The Voice Teacher Podcast.
Hey there, welcome to the Voice Teacher Podcast. I'm Aimee Geddes here with Sam Johnson, and we are voice teachers. This podcast is brought to you by the International Voice Teachers of Mix. And just so you know what that is, it's exactly what it sounds like. An international group of like-minded voice teachers focused on teaching healthy, fluid singing throughout the voice. And some of you probably know Sam. Okay, probably all of you know Sam already. So we're going to introduce him a little bit. Sam has like 750,000 followers on YouTube, and he's done so much for IVTOM, actually, probably that a lot of you don't even realize that he does. He's our education director, and he's a fantastic voice teacher. So, Sam, why don't you introduce a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sam. I teach singing lessons every day, pretty much every day. I teach them too often. It's hard for me to say no to people. And yeah, I've been teaching full-time. Okay, so I've been teaching for about, 13 years now, and about 6 of them have been totally full-time. And
That's awesome.
It's fun. I mean, I've tried to do a lot of other things. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Singing's too hard. I'm going to go try and be a doctor. And that didn't work out. And then I was like, I'm going to try and be a lawyer. And that didn't work out. And I kept coming back to this. And I guess for a reason. Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know you had pursued those other paths. Doctor and lawyer, those are pretty ambitious. I mean, I get it that singing is hard for sure, but I mean, doctor and lawyer, I just wouldn't want to be around blood or arguments all day long. Like, that's not for me. So tell me kind of what took you on that path and what brought you back to singing.
In high school, I started taking voice lessons from Terry Stock, who is a wonderful teacher, and she's one of the original founders of IVTOM, and I had really good experiences with that. And I was in Les Mis, and then someone who was like on the board at the University of Utah, their music school, saw me in it and was like, I think you would do well here. And so I felt like I was being recruited, kind of like a football player or something.
You're like,
so
yes,
I went there for
they want me.
Yeah, exactly. And I was not a good student in high school. So like, it was even more like I was being recruited because like the actual university wouldn't let me in. And then like the School of Music had to be like, please let him in.
I'm shocked to hear that you are not a good student. That's really surprising to me because I know how knowledgeable you are, but that's funny. That's interesting.
I mean, everyone
to hear.
kind of comes into their own at different points and whatever. And anyway, it was not my first semester at school that I figured out how to do school. So I was like having a really hard time with it. I had not done very much opera or classical music like at all. And that's all I was doing. And along with adjusting to being in school and the social stuff with all of that. And it was just a huge adjustment for me and did not go well that first semester. And then I was like, maybe this is just not for me. So I took some time off, and I was doing like community theater kind of stuff and still enjoying singing and taking voice lessons from Terry and Dean and pretty much every other speech level singing teacher that would come into town. And
yeah,
like, I still loved it. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that we were at a bunch of those same things. Even though I was never actually a part of that organization, I showed up.
Ditto.
Yeah. And then I started volunteering up at Primary Children's Medical Center, and I was having a blast with that. And I was like, yeah, okay, I want to go into medicine because my mom's a nurse, and I always kind of thought I was going to go into medicine. And I started meeting other people who were a little further along and saw how hard they were working. And I was like, yeah, this is not for me. Like, honestly, just the commitment that they had. And like, that's your entire life if you want to go into medicine, kind of in the same way that if you want to go into opera, like that's kind of got to be your entire life to be competitive.
For sure.
Yeah. So I was like, no, this isn't for me. And then I went over to Slick and then was in the music program. And for me, that was kind of an easier landing, just the community college in Salt Lake. And then I kind of learned how to study and learned how to do stuff. And then I got a job teaching in Hong Kong. full time. And then at that point, I was still like, I'm going to come home and I'm going to be a lawyer because like lawyers actually make money and like whatever. And then
after they sell their
by
souls,
teaching,
right?
Exactly. But by teaching full time for like 18 months, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is all I love to do because it kind of has the logic component and the argument component of law. It has kind of the physiology and it just combined all of my interests. And yeah. How did you get into singing and teaching singing?
Teaching singing. Well, it was kind of an adventure. So I've been teaching since 2003. So almost 20 years, but I have never actually taught full time. So I started teaching when I was 18. And wait, I never found out. How old were you when you started? Because you were pretty young too.
I was pretty young. Yeah. In high school, like actually in that Les Mis production, I was already giving people vowel modifications. They're like, Sam, this is hard. And I'm like, narrow your vowel. And nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
That was me in high school too. I was like, well, if she would just do this girl can't sing respect because she's not in the right place. She just needs to do this, and I was kind of one of those kids who just thought I knew everything. And honestly, so I started singing when I was about 10 and I just was like one of those kids stuck in my chest voice but I just loved it. I loved singing and my parents were so supportive. I felt like when I did something performed, I could shine no brighter to them, And so that was a lot of it, feeling that parental support, just I am so cool when I do this. And I just felt so good when I sang. But there was always you know how it is. There's always those frustrations for singers. It's I want to do this, but I can't. I don't know how to get past this part of the song, or why is that so hard? Or why do I have to do this big switchy thing to kind of get to these notes, and it sounds different and all of that. So I remember hearing about Dean in high school, and well, not Dean in particular. I remember hearing about Seth Riggs, and I heard about Shadaisy. Because, again, country music was in its heyday in the 90s. And at the time, that's what I was going to be. I mean, I was going to be a lot of things, like a writer and a movie star and an actress and a dancer and a singer and everything, but I always knew I was going to have a career in the arts, whether it was singing or whatever. So anyway, I got into singing and I took lessons with Laurie Vandegrift in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I went to high school with her daughter.
Okay, perfect. Yep. You guys are the same age. And so yeah, and she was very encouraging. She was a big milestone about, she's the one who said, you could teach this. And I was just finishing high school and I was like, I think I could, but really? Could I? You can.
It's kind of amazing how just one comment from a teacher like that can totally change. When Terry was like, Sam, I think you're going to be a teacher someday. I'm going to teach you how to teach. I was like, okay. Thank you, Terry Stock. Sure. Thank you.
Those first teachers who made that suggestion, and my parents cheered me on, but I didn't really you can't believe everything your parents tell you sometimes because they're supposed to be your biggest fan, even though you really want their approval. But when your teacher that you look up to says you could do this, and she took me to Dean. I choreographed something for her in the summer. That's another something I've done, choreograph musicals. Anyway, she said, well, I can pay you or I can give you lessons or I can give you lessons with Dean. So I was like, well, I want lessons more than money. And so she gave me 4 lessons with her and then I think 3 more with Dean. And I was beside myself. I was like, what? I get to go have 3 lessons with Dean Kalin because my parents couldn't afford it at the time. And it just felt like such a stretch. But she did. And I was like you. I went to all the SLS things. I soaked up every bit that I could. I got a scholarship to go to Weber State for musical theater. And so I did that for 2.5 years. And then I kind of had crisis mode. I had been teaching all this time and some major shifts in my life. And I just went, I can't do this degree anymore. So I actually ended up graduating in communication, which is funny because I said to my dad the other day, I'm like, Dad, I'm finally going to use my communications degree. We're doing this podcast. And it's this is what news class prepared me for, was to, sit and have crosstalk and do interviews. So I guess it all came around, but there've been so many times over the years as I'm directing musicals or teaching people musical theater, like I've done so much of that, even performing still, where I'm like, why didn't I just get my degree in musical theater? Like, why didn't I just finish? I could have, but here I sit with plenty of musical theater credits, 25 years of musical theater experience, a teeny tiny couple semesters in public relations and communication. And, it all works together. It's all coming together. But I feel like more importantly, it's not just getting the degree, whether you go that way or not, because you definitely can be a voice teacher without getting a degree, because, you have yours in singing, correct, Sam?
In vocal performance. Yeah.
Vocal performance. Yeah. And I don't. And I feel like we both have thriving studios. And so I feel like there's definitely extra elements. I think, maybe let's talk about continuing education, because I think that makes you more of a teacher, and teaching makes you more of a teacher than any degree or program ever could. Like the things I've learned since college have been way more than anything I learned in college.
I think it's also way more common for people who do go to college for singing or music theater to go for performance rather than for pedagogy. I mean, in Utah, there's only one pedagogy program, and at Weber.
I didn't even know that, because I was too scared of the music program at Weber.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually a good enough musician back then to feel like I could hold my own and go into that world. And I didn't want to sing classical.
Is so common for singers, especially like that first semester up at the U, when I was getting up at 5:30 and taking the bus in and for a 7:00 music theory class.
Bless you.
Was awful. It was terrible for me, because it was me as a singer who did a week of music theory right before the placement exam, and was like, okay, I can do this. And I learned quite a bit, but compared to a lot of the people in that class who were playing piano since they were 8 and just really, really good musicians, I was totally out of my element.
You just made me feel so much
it.
better, Sam, because I feel like I spend a lot of time apologizing for not being a great pianist. I'm I feel like I have taken piano lessons so many times. I have looked at this music for years, day in, day out. And my hands do not obey, because my brain gets too distracted. I start thinking about the vocal line. I'm thinking about, all these things I've got to do with the voice. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is worry about playing all these things. That takes all of my brain, and I don't have all of my brain to give to that. I need to I'm listening to the voice.
Yeah. And I think it's easy, especially when you work with someone like Dean. Dean Kalin, for anyone who doesn't know who Dean Kalin is just one of the best voice teachers out there. Our American Idol. I found out about Dean because I think my junior year of high school, that was when David was on American Idol. And one of our family friends came over and was like, oh, I know his voice teacher. And I was like, do you? And so I had a lesson with him. And same thing, it was a real treat whenever I would have a lesson with Dean, because it was just prohibitively expensive for me at the time. Voice lessons, let's be real, it's a very luxury expense. And if Terry didn't help me out, would I be
Terry
here?
Too. My goodness.
Bless Terry. Oh my goodness. But anyway, Dean is this wonderful, wonderful teacher, just with such an ear for technical fixes that he can just get basically anyone mixing in 5 minutes. But he's also an incredible pianist. And I think that as someone who's I want to teach, I like this side of everything, seeing him sit down and just play anything by ear in any key, it makes it feel like you can't do that, which is not true. There are so many ways around that, and it's a really wonderful skill. I even started piano lessons again last week, because I think that down the line it would be nice to be able to accompany people a little, but that's not needed. Anyway, that's some of my continuing education at this point, is let's just bring this skill up to par a little bit.
Well, and I think, okay, so I joined IVTOM right at the beginning. I actually went in for a lesson with Dean. And at the time I was thinking, because, you go through these phases as a teacher. Like you said, you try other things. and where I've always kept my studio part-time because I have 4 kids now. So my life is busy. So I was always trying to figure out, because there was a time, like probably those first 8 years of teaching, I was doing a lot of other things. I was still doing a lot of performing. I was, it's like you're in your 20s and you're just trying things out, you're trying to figure out what you're really going to do. So anyway, I was like, well, I just need to take some more lessons and better myself. So I went into Dean, and he mentioned this IVTOM thing. And I think I was actually pregnant with my second at that time. And he invited me to join IVTOM, and I was flattered. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I had been hiding that I was even teaching for a long time. I was trying to I didn't want to tell like the real teachers that I was teaching too. So I'd never said much about it. And he knew all along, it's not like he was blind. He knew that I was teaching, and he graciously invited me to join this IVTOM. And I was like, okay, that sounds amazing. Like, what can I learn? How can I gain more information that's not going to be so cost prohibitive that I can't afford to teach? So anyway, and then he invited me to be on the board, and I've been doing that since 2012 as a young teacher because my perspective was different. And, I'm grateful to have been able to bring that and to kind of say, hey, look, yeah, this is what it's like for a 20-something young mom trying to teach voice lessons on the side. Because I think there's a lot of teachers out there in my shoes that sometimes feel like they can't hang up their shingle or really advertise. They just kind of do it on the side. They're like, well, yeah, I do a few lessons here and there. Or, that imposter syndrome.
Especially in Utah, I mean, just like where it's very common for especially young women to go to college for a year or two, get married, drop out, and then teach just from their house. It's so common to the point that people will charge $10 for an hour, and that's just to stay competitive with their neighbors,
right.
Which is just not worth their time. But I do think that things like IVTOM and other continuing education and accreditation kind of things can just give you the confidence to actually charge what you're worth.
Yes. Well, don't you feel like, and this is for me, I felt like my education just tripled or quadrupled with IVTOM. I grew so much. And the confidence from having other teachers say, you can raise your prices. I was like, I was charging I think at the time I was charging $80 a month. So 4 half-hour lessons for $80.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was probably 30 at the time, maybe 29, 30-ish. And I was scared to raise my prices. And I think Marianne said, look, you live in a nice neighborhood. We live in a really nice neighborhood. And she's like, if people can't afford to pay you another 20, 25 bucks a month, she's like, they really can. I was like, gosh, I don't know, but I did it. And guess what? People stayed, and I got more busy. And even then I raised my prices last year, and more people came. I feel like my waiting list just grows, and it's not that I'm trying to be greedy. Now I'm just trying to keep up with inflation just to, put food on the table. But but yeah, I mean, knowing what you're worth is huge. And I would love to know, I want to know what you charged when you first started. And I would love to know, I'm going to put out a poll for the teachers to see, I've already typed it up. I'm going to send it out. I want to know how much people charged when they first started, how old they were, and what do they charge now? And if their location has changed, because that can make a difference too,
Yeah, when I was 18, 19, 20, I didn't have a ton of students, but I would teach my cousin's kid. And so that was just all pro bono, just to get kind of practice, or just teaching friends kind of on the side. And then a few years in, I think I got my first real student, and I think I was charging $15 for a half hour. And I think that I was kind of at that rate until I moved to Hong Kong. So moving from, Salt Lake, where I had no real expenses, just living with my mom, to one of the most expensive cities in the world, they have to charge more for a lesson with me. And so even just seeing how much the studio I was working for was charging for a lesson with me started making me feel like, oh wait, people are signing up for this and they're paying $100 an hour for me. Oh my goodness. And I wasn't making that much, because it was a great thing for me, especially for just saying, yes, you can charge this. People will continue coming back if they feel like they're getting enough from it. And then I came home and I was at 30, and I stayed at 30 until YouTube exploded. 30 for a half hour.
Hey, IFTOM teachers, we have a super exciting masterclass coming up. It's on September 17th at 2 p.m. and Mountain Daylight Time, and it will be on Zoom. Her name is Kelly Hidgley, and she's going to be talking about vocal acoustics in the first resonance. Is that correct, Sam? Can you tell me?
Yeah, first resonance interactions and why they matter. So Kelly is one of the best minds in voice. She is one of the experts in Voce Vista and in vocal acoustics. And so we're really, really lucky to have her come presenting. So if you are a member of IFTOM, go register really fast. We're running out of seats. We're running out of Zoom seats, so you gotta get there quick.
But if you are a member of IFTOM, it's only like $10, I think, right?
It's a $10 thing. If you're not a member, this is still something that I highly recommend going and checking out if you're a singer, if you're a teacher, and it is $25, and we have some amazing discounts if you live in other countries other than the US, and your dollar isn't quite as strong as the US dollar, so go check out ivtom.org and register.
Yeah, and just so you know, IFTOM is all about providing education. Obviously it's not about the money, and we want to help people sing better. We want to provide the education. So that's why IFTOM is actually sponsoring this, to have this phenomenal speaker come, and we want it to be very affordable for members, and bringing in people who are thinking of joining us. And we would just love to have you, because we love singing and we want everyone to love it and have the best information out there.
But it is a bargain, and Kelly is brilliant. Yeah. I'm so excited to listen.
Me too. Okay, grab your Zoom seat before they're gone.
How much continuing education do you think that teachers should pursue? I feel like a lot of us still stay in voice lessons fairly regularly, which keeps us accountable. IFTOM is wonderful because we've had just the yearly conference, and so going and hearing from just world experts at least once a year since I was 19 has been really lovely. Mm-hmm. What do you think is useful?
Oh, I agree. I think always developing your voice and discovering new things, because I've been singing for 28 years now, and I made a brand new discovery about my voice last week or the week before. I found, there's always something else in there. And I feel like you could study just the voice and the processes and all the things that feed into it your whole life, and you'd never be done. There would be so much. So I think, there's a reason they call it continuing education. It's an ongoing thing. Attend the conferences every year, because those are 3 days of fabulous information. Whenever there's a masterclass, attend. IFTOM makes it so affordable. For the level of instruction that we get in here, and you're only paying the yearly fee is $85. It's so cheap. And just the amount of information available, you can do self-study. And then, of course, continuing to study the voice, whatever your budget allows. But I think you should plan for that. Reinvest in yourself. Take a few dollars from every lesson you make and put it aside for continuing education. That should just be part of being a teacher, is continuing to better yourself, because you can't help other people if you're not on, if you're not growing. Yeah. You're not going to help them grow.
And one of my favorite things about conferences is seeing just vocal superstars like Ken Bozeman.
Yes.
Just so passionate, and knowing that he's been doing this for a long time, and that he still cares about this as much as he does. It's oh my gosh, it just makes me feel like I can do more. I can do more. Yes. I'm in this because I love this, and I feel like I'm neglecting it at some points. And just, I think being surrounded by that level of teacher and that kind of passion I always feel really invigorated after an IFTOM conference.
Me too. I feel gosh, I have all this support. I may not have been gutsy enough to charge what I'm worth had I not gone to the IFTOM conference and seen what the bigger world of voice is doing. Because I think, maybe I'm expensive for my physical neck of the woods, but globally, or even regionally, like statewide, regionally, I'm not like,
You're
I'm
very
not that
competitive,
expensive.
very competitive for
So,
what you offer. Yeah.
so I'm just like, okay, so yes, there's a balance between my backyard neighbor who's actually very talented and I want to see succeed and, being affordable for them, as well as like reaching people halfway across the world, like my student in Poland, like those kinds of things. But I definitely would not have made those connections. I wouldn't have had the education and I wouldn't have had the confidence had I not been a part of IVTOM, because that's
Yeah.
what made all the difference for me. I spent 8 years kind of just sort of floundering and wondering if I was good enough. But joining IVTOM, everything changed and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm on my way to like being awesome at this. And okay, let's be honest. When I was 18, I thought I was awesome anyway. But, that's how you think when you're 18. So, but you know what I mean? Like getting that confidence to be like, I can do this. And if you're
Yeah.
confident in your teaching, you can instill your confidence in your students to let them know that they are awesome too. And they're doing the things they need to do to succeed. And they're going to be successful. They just have to have the
Yes.
right mindset and the right system to get them there.
Exactly. And I love IVTOM. Obviously, like this, it sounds like an ad for IVTOM because at some level, please join IVTOM. I mean, I'm
Right.
we're both on the board. You're the director of mentors, and like we both want to see this organization succeed. But you had asked me earlier about like my experience with college and everything. And I think that I'm glad that I went to college. I'm still paying off my loans, which really sucks. Is it worth that much money? I don't know. I don't know if you're wanting to go teach voice lessons, like there's definitely a lot that's wonderful about it and being exposed to a lot of different ideas was very good, but I have paid to IVTOM over the time that I'm here a 20th of what I paid for like a year of school. Not saying I regret it because I don't regret it, but it just doesn't make sense financially at some level. And I feel like a lot of people feel very pressured into doing that. But we're kind of closer to plumbers or electricians than to doctors at some level.
The vocal
Um,
mechanic, right?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, think of if you can find some sort of trade school for singing teaching,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it feels like we do
Mm-hmm.
more. Not to invalidate the higher ed, because I do think there's a lot of value in that too, but just know why you're going into it. Because if you're wanting to just teach private pop voice lessons, consider what you're getting. If you want to teach classical music, yeah, probably you'll want to go get at least a bachelor's degree in vocal performance. It's just so specialized that you kind of need to go to those institutions to get the right kind of training. But even that's getting less true.
And let me ask you, how many people have ever asked you if you have a degree in music? Like students, potential students.
Yeah. Yeah. I've taught hundreds of people, hundreds and hundreds, probably like 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
Two.
Well, there you go. And I find the same thing. People honestly assume that my degree is in music. They see my plaques on the wall. They're my IVTOM plaques. Actually, I don't even hang up my bachelor's certificate. I don't even know where it is. It's like in a box somewhere. Because, I mean, yes, I have a degree, but even had I finished my degree in musical theater, people honestly assume that that's what my degree is anyway, because I have so much experience in that. And experience matters so much more than the letters behind your name, especially when you're singing, when you're, like you said, like teaching pop. If you're teaching classical, then yeah, the degree probably matters more. But if you're teaching contemporary singing and every style that falls into that, other than classical, honestly, I think it's more your private training, your personality, your ear for it, your desire to push ahead and learn the technique, but continuing education, because I definitely think, as an 18, 20, even 25-year-old, the education level that I had was good. It was good enough to get people started, but not good enough to catapult me into that next level of like serious teachers who really know how to get it done and can crank it out. But that came with experience too, like doing it and studying, training, doing all those things.
Just the fact that I went to school, I think has gotten me 0 students. The fact that I show that I can teach and that I have language to talk about these kind of things and that I'm freely giving that away on YouTube has gotten me lots of students. If you know what you're doing and you can help people sing better, you can teach and you can get students. But I think we tend to gatekeep ourselves a lot, and maybe for good reasons, because like there are some teachers out there who are less than beneficial for their clientele. But how many of them have doctorates? Some. How many of them don't have anything?
You know, I found, and even when I was in college and I got shifted to a different voice teacher every semester, the ones who I learned the most from were the ones who continued to study themselves.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, that's what I looked for in a teacher, was a teacher who was continually asking questions and learning. And that's what inspired me, I think, the most when I joined IFTOM. Was that it was all these extremely knowledgeable teachers who did not assume that they had reached the end. They knew a lot, but they knew there was more to learn. And I thought, and that was a huge draw to me. That was fascinating. Like, yes, I want to be like them because they're amazing. So I guess I needed to keep asking questions. I guess I need to keep be humble and realize that, okay, I still have more to do, more to learn. It's not done yet.
So while I feel like neither of us have reached the end of our education, I do think we've reached the end of this podcast. And if you have listened, thank you so much. Do you have any last thoughts?
Subscribe to IFTOM. Join us. Come and learn. This is the place to be. If you want friendship,
go look
support,
somewhere around here. We're going to put some links. Click on all of the links that are around and stay tuned. We're going to be back next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast, brought to you by IFTOM, International Voice Teachers of Mix. Your co-hosts are Sam Johnson and Aimee Geddes. Learn more about IFTOM at iftom.org and find Sam Johnson at vocalese.net and Aimee Geddes at breakthrough-studios.com. Voiceover and theme song by Maz Mazak, and this podcast is edited by Amber. You have been listening to
the Voice Teacher Podcast.